All right, welcome back. We've got United States Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky on the line. It's a great honor to be on with him. He's a great guy, great American, would have made a great president, but he makes a great United States Senator, and he's there to be a guiding light in the U.S. Senate for conservatives and libertarians who want smaller government. So, Senator Rand Paul, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
So what are our prospects for repeal of Obamacare? You know, my audience is, sitting on the edge of their heels. They want it so badly. But the question is, can we get it? And if you get it, is it even going to be something that any of us want?
Well, to a person, every Republican in the Senate and every Republican in the House promised to repeal Obamacare. And the problem is the bill that's confronting us keeps large parts of Obamacare. It keeps 10 of the 12 insurance regulations or mandates that increase the price. It keeps the Obamacare subsidies, and then it also keeps the Medicaid expansion. In addition, it creates a brand new federal insurance bailout fund. They call it a stabilization fund. They say, well, if you give us $130 billion from the U.S. Treasury, we'll lower insurance premiums. And so I raised my hand at lunch today, and I said, well, you know, my rent's expensive in Washington, D.C. What about a rent stabilization fund? Can you lower my rent if we give them money? What about an education? I got two kids in college, and education's expensive. What about an education stabilization fund? And I haven't had a new car in a couple of years, several years. I said, what about new cars are so expensive? Could we have a new car stabilization fund? And they all kind of looked perplexed, and it's like, you know, we're not for that. Republicans are not for that, and yet that's what they've stuck in the bill is this enormous bailout of insurance companies that make $15 billion a year. I'm horrified that this is coming from Republicans.
Well, you know what's that old saying that, you know, you're not supposed to watch meat being made or bills being made in Washington, D.C. We know it's going to be ugly. We know it's not going to be good. They were never going to repeal it completely and give, you know, in its place nothing, which is what should have been done. But the reality is I just want something better than what we've got now that gets rid of the taxes and lets me buy across state lines, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is that people say, oh, I'm just trying to be too pure. But when you look at this, I've told people I want 100% repeal, but I'll vote for 80% repeal. Heck, I would probably vote for 50% repeal, but that's not what they're asking. They're asking me to keep most of it and then add to it. So we're getting Obamacare Plus in the sense that $130 billion of new spending that was not in Obamacare. We're going to fund these things called cost-sharing reductions, which are subsidies that even Obamacare didn't fund. So we have new funding streams, new permanent funds that weren't even in Obamacare, and then we don't repeal the most egregious regulations that led to the death spiral. In fact, they are by their actions are showing that the death spiral of Obamacare continues. We're not going to fix it. We're going to subsidize the death spiral.
So my question to you is, look, I share your frustration. My gosh, if I could have my way, I would want your proposal. I read the Rand Paul proposal, and you had the best one by far. But how do you cobble together the votes in a House and a Senate that are filled with A, liberals, and B, moderate rhino establishment people who you and I both know should be Democrats too? They're very marginal Republicans. Dean Heller, my U.S. Senator, I mean, I just can't stand. At least you're fighting against a repeal that isn't conservative enough. He's fighting for one that, in his opinion, is too conservative. He wants it to be more liberal. I don't know how you get to that spot.
There is a way you can please everybody. You can square the circle, and I just got off the phone with the president a few minutes ago, and he and I talked about it, and this is my suggestion.
Okay.
Big government Republicans and Democrats want to spend more money. Put the spending proposals in a separate bill that Democrats want. Keep the repeal bill repeal, because Democrats will not repeal any taxes, then they won't repeal regulations. So let's have a repeal bill and a spending bill. There's something called S-CHIP, which is a funding bill for Medicaid. Comes up this year. The Democrats will see it as a must-do. Put it forward and say, y'all want it? We're going to put on this, insurance bailout money with it too, and you're going to have to vote for both. And I'll vote against that because I'm not for the insurance bailout, but then it allows me to vote for a repeal bill because you strip all of the big government funding stuff off of the repeal. And this is what I've been saying for a while. If we narrow the repeal bill, you may get something that even I can support.
Now, it's, to me, that sounds like a brilliant compromise, and I love it, except in the end, when you vote, and if I was there, I would vote for the regulations and the taxes being gone, and then in the other circle, you've got all the money being spent, you and I would both vote against it, but then Democrats would vote for that, and all the rhinos would vote for that, and so my argument has always been America's on a crash course with a debt crisis, and we're going to go down. because no matter what you do in the House and the Senate, you can never, ever get anyone to cut anything. You're never going to cut anything. You won't, like you said, you only add on. So when are we ever going to get the $20 trillion in debt under control? The answer is never, right? Let's be honest.
Well, there's a couple of ways. The country can either have a crisis, a crisis of confidence in the dollar, which can happen at any one point in time. We can have a leverage crisis like we had in 2008. Those things are possible, and that's a precipitous calamity, and that's one way that a country reorients itself. But that's when you become Greece, and austerity becomes your plan, and it's a terrible, terrible sort of way to have to fix your country. The other way is more gradually, and that is about winning elections. And that's the real question. Republicans said, when the popular vote gave them the House of Representatives, they said, oh, we wish we could do something, but you have to give us a Senate. The public gave us a Senate. And then we said, well, we can't do anything because we need the presidency. Now the Republicans have all three branches of government, and they say, oh, you know what? We were kidding. We're not really for repealing Obamacare. We want to keep Obamacare. That's pretty pretty unsettling, it's dissatisfying, but it's also disappointing and makes me sad to think that my party promised over and over again, we're going to rip it out root and branch, we're going to repeal Obamacare, and now it turns out, no, we're going to keep it.
Well, like I said, you're never going to get anyone to agree to cut any spending. They don't cut a dollar. I mean, I just don't know where you're ever going to get it. I've given lectures for the last year, Senator Paul, where in front of business audiences, the Money Show, Freedom Fest, lots of different places, where people ask me questions, and my answer was, listen, I think Trump will be on basis a pretty good president, but I think he'll cut taxes dramatically. I think he'll probably build the wall. I think he'll cut regulations. All those will be good things, but I think spending will dramatically increase, not decrease, because just like Reagan, in order to get the tax cuts, you got to compromise the Democrats, and they want to increase spending, and most Republicans want the infrastructure spending. So in the end, you're going to get an orgy of spending. So in the end, you're just never going to get anyone who's ever going to cut anything. All they ever do, if you're lucky, is cut the increase a little bit, but generally they just increase on top of increase on top of increase. See anything I'm saying that's wrong?
No, but I say there are two possibilities. There's either going to be a crisis of confidence, and nobody ever learns their lesson until we have a crisis, or one of the other alternatives that people have talked about, and there are a variety of opinions from people on the right, but whether or not an Article 5 convention where the states send delegates and we decide that we're going to have spending limitations and that people are going to have to balance the budget. 75% of the American people are for a constitutional amendment that would say we have to balance our budget each year, which would sort of force fiscal sanity up here. Others worry that a convention could make things worse, but I don't know how it can get worse than a country where most people up here ignore the Constitution anyway.
I'm going to sound very unpure to you, so I hope you don't get mad at me, because we agree on 99% of things, Rand, but I'm going to sound unpure. Because Trump and because we as Republicans promised the world that our number one thing if you elect us is to repeal Obamacare, even though I agree with you that it's not a good repeal, even though I disagree with a lot of what's in it, and I would go the way you go, I would go your route, excuse the pun, I think we have to find a way to pass it. Otherwise, we're not going to win in 18 or 20. We're going to lose the House in 18. We're going to lose the presidency in 20. And I think if you pass a repeal, no matter how ugly it is, just the word repeal, if you pass it, it sounds like we kept our word and we're going to win in 20.
If we pass a bill and next year premiums go up 25%, it's not a real repeal bill, that half of the Republicans say what happened to repeal and are unhappy with us and either stay home or decide to go to a third party, and then insurance rates go up next year because we didn't really fix the problem, and then independents say, well, gosh, Republicans promised us lower rates, and the rates are worse, and we still have this death spiral of whatever is called Republican care now, I think it could be worse. I think there's a possibility we can lose electoral victories because we actually passed the wrong thing. Just calling something repeal and getting it done, or sort of like my friend Thomas Massey said, he's a congressman from Kentucky, he says, they're treating this thing like a kidney stone. Pass it, by all means pass it. I just got to get rid of this thing. It doesn't matter. It does matter what's in it, because if we pass something that's bad, I think that's actually worse for us electorally than doing nothing.
Scary, disappointing, frustrating, don't know what to think. I just wanted to make sure that we got rid of those taxes, got rid of as many regulations as we could, and I wanted to buy across state lines. If I got those three done, I would have kind of lived with anything that was out there, but you've scared me into thinking that what's out there isn't any of those things. So I just don't know where to go, Rand, and I'll bet you know that most Republican voters feel the same way.
We're going to try to make the bill better, in almost constant contact with the president. I think he wants the same thing. And I think together with the president, my hope is still that we can get to a repeal bill.
All right. I mean, look, just if it matters at all, my wish, if Wainwright's wish matters, get it as far as you can get it towards conservative, libertarian, and freedom, and then vote yes. What else can I say? Senator Rand Paul, we love you. We appreciate your battle. Thank you.
Thanks,
God
Wayne.
bless.